Hello everybody, this is TipTop MTG here today with another Magic the Gathering video. In today's video, we are going to be playing a game with Magic the Gathering when it comes to making custom Magic the Gathering cards. For those of you who don't know, every Sunday on my channel, I do some sort of custom MTG video, whether it be reviewing custom cards people have made, reviewing a big project I'm doing called Magic the Marveling, or just talking about custom cards. Now, occasionally I do fun games like making mechanics based on random words, or today I'm introducing a new type of kind of game where I take a random card from Magic's history and turn it into a commander. So I'm using Scryfall's random card, and essentially what I'm doing is on the right, you will see a random card, and on the left, you will see a custom card. So here's my example. Say I got Bottle Gnomes. It's a 3-cost artifact gnome, 1/3, and you can sacrifice it to gain 3 life. Not very interesting. I couldn't just put legendary on this and call it a commander. But I could turn it into a 4-cost legendary. Obviously, by the way, these are not in any way super balanced. I am thinking about balance when I do them, but for example, here I kind of take that ability and I kind of take the essence of the card. So sacrifice a gnome creature you control. You gain 3 life for each gnome creature that left the battlefield this turn. Or you can and it says whenever you cast an artifact spell, you may pay blue. If you do, create a 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature token. So, I'm going to take some aspect of the card, whether it be the exact wording, or maybe I take what the card does and kind of amplify it a little bit, make it legendary, up the cost, or, there are numerous things I can do. I'm not going to always just take what the card does and turn it commander-ish. Sometimes I might take the flavor of it, or, something along those lines. And yeah. So why don't we just generate our first random card? So we got Disintegrate. So this is kind of a famous spell. So it's X and a red for a sorcery, and Disintegrate deals X damage to target creature or player. That creature cannot regenerate this turn. If the creature is if that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. That's the Oracle text. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you the Magic Online promo version just so you can see the updated Oracle text for it. So if we were to design some sort of commander around this, well, this one isn't a creature, so maybe it's not as easy, but it's obviously going to be red. How can I turn this into a commander? So I'm just going to say, I'm going to just name each card whatever I'm basing it off of. Now, we could very easily just mimic the cost structure. So maybe we have Disintegrate. It's an X and a red for a legendary creature elemental, and it's going to be a 0/0. Alright, so here's what I have so far. Disintegrate, X and a red, legendary creature elemental 0/1. Disintegrate enters the battlefield with X +1/+0 counters on it, which are a thing, and they're actually in MTG Arena at this point. That's why I'm using them. Obviously, you could do +1/+1 counters, but then that kind of takes it out of red. You could make it maybe a 2/2 by default, and then put charge counters on it, but something along these lines. And then maybe you have something like, so here's kind of what I've got for my, not final product, but here's my first draft, because that's what you do when you make a card. You kind of do your first draft, and then maybe you make some changes, and then maybe you make some more changes. So X and a red for legendary creature elemental 0/1, and it enters the battlefield with X +1/+0 counters on it. Then you can tap and remove any number of counters from it, and for each counter removed from Disintegrate this way, it deals X damage to any target. Creatures dealt damage this way can't be regenerated this turn. If a creature dealt damage this way would die this turn, exile it instead. So it's basically Disintegrate, but delayed and in the command zone. And is that really interesting? Now, obviously, it does have some advantages. You do get a big creature, but it also has some disadvantages. It's much slower. So is this the kind of card that you would want as your commander? Not really. So does it really meet the goal of turning cards into commanders? No, this is kind of just turning cards into creatures. So why don't I do some slight modifications? Alright, so here's kind of attempt number 2. So this turns it into more of a commander. For instance, it enters the battlefield with X +1/+0 counters on it. That's still pretty much the same. But it says, if a creature would die, if it was dealt non-combat damage by a source you control this turn, exile it instead. Then tap, remove any number of counters from Disintegrate. For each counter removed from Disintegrate this way, it deals X damage to any target. Now, we do lose the whole regenerate bit, but that's not super relevant anymore. And what this does is it makes it more of a universal effect. And that's really what you want to look for in a commander that's not super Voltron-y. And obviously, this could be a Voltron commander. The whole X +1/+0 counters on it does make it a prime candidate for that. But what this does is it maybe makes it a good candidate to be the head of a burn deck. think about it. You know, even if you just pay X 0 on turn 1, play this 0/1, now you're exiling things as you're dealing damage, which is a nice little boost. But is that enough to build a deck around it? Maybe not. Maybe you need some other benefit. But I think that separating the, you know, the exile clause from the ability of it and giving it to all your non-combat sources of damage really makes this a commander card. While it may not be a great commander, this now makes it a commander, not just a creature. And that's kind of what I want to make sure I do for all of these. I don't want to just turn a card into a creature. I want to turn it into a commander that you might actually want to build around. So maybe I change the ability around. All right, so here's what I got. Disintegrate enters the battlefield with X +1/+0 counters, and you'll notice now it's now double X. If a creature would die, if it was dealt non-combat damage by a source you control this turn, exile it instead. Put a burn counter on the exiled card. Then you can tap and remove a +1/+0 counter from Disintegrate. It deals X damage to any target where X is the number of cards in exile with burn counters on them. So, here's the idea. You're going to exile a bunch of things with normal just kill spells. Disintegrate is going to make those, you know, turn into exiled cards that boost its power, and then you're going to unleash a bunch of damage, maybe directly at players' faces with Disintegrate. And I actually think this is a wonderful design. This feels like, maybe it feels like a commander. You know, I could see this being a commander, but it also has almost everything that Disintegrate has. Now, it does deal damage a little bit differently. You're not just paying X for damage, which is obviously what is great about Disintegrate, but it does turn it into a commander. All right, so why don't we do another card? So our next card is Spire Tracer. Now this is a 1-cost green creature elf scout, and it says it can't be blocked except by creatures with flying or reach. So, you know, it's very elusive. Green doesn't have a lot of flyers, so they have reachers. And I think that's something we can do. Maybe a Reach Matters tribal. So why don't I just come up with just a full card design, unlike the other one where I kind of went through it. I'm going to come up with a design and then we can talk about it. So here's what I came up with. So I have a 3-cost red and green, just because I feel like I've done enough monocolored commanders. Legendary creature elf scout 2/2 with reach, and it says creatures can't be blocked except by creatures with flying or reach. So obviously you're going to want to put this in a deck that, you know, has a bunch of reachers so that you can block creatures, but no one else can. And it kind of creates this, I'm going to swing at you and you can't do anything about it, but if you swing at me, I can do something about it. So you definitely have to build around it. It's not some horribly overpowered card. I mean, I guess it theoretically could be, but I think that there are a lot of opportunities to build an interesting Reach Matters deck. It feels very chaotic, it feels very swarmy and rushy, so I think it makes a lot of sense in Gruul. And yeah, I just really like that this promotes such an interesting way to play and build your deck. Now, obviously, I've already gone through 2 cards, really, 1 card I did mention, but if any of these have, you know, something I'm not thinking about, is this card just overpowered with one other card? Let me know in the comments down below. Obviously, I don't know all cards, and obviously something I'm gonna miss some things. So yeah, why don't we do another card? By the way, the reason, you know, with Disintegrate, I broke down each step of design. This one didn't have as many steps because it is a much simpler card. It only has 2 lines of text, and I think that it is interesting to see how some commanders can be very interesting without needing lots of text. So this was one where I almost immediately came up with it, and I really like it, but Disintegrate required a little bit more work. Okay, next we have Hammer of Baghdad, which that's definitely interesting. Why don't we update it for a slightly newer version so that we can see the more updated Oracle text. So we have Hammer of Baghdad. So this is the sorcery, and it said 3-cost red sorcery. It deals 3 damage to target creature or player. Pay 2 red, 2 red, red, red. Return it from your graveyard to your hand. Activate this ability only during your upkeep. So this is, similarly, I feel like, obviously, red spells are going to lead me towards building a burn commander, and that's also because there aren't a lot of burn commanders, but I feel like this could be an interesting one. So why don't I put down a few of my base thoughts, and then we can expand on it. Alright, so here was my first base thought. So we have Hammer of Baghdad. It's a 3-cost red legendary creature wizard. When it enters the battlefield, or when it or another wizard enters the battlefield under your control, it deals 3 damage to any target. Pay 2 red, red, red to return it from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate this ability only during your upkeep and only if an opponent lost life this turn. So the idea is you never really have to pay commander tax, but that's only if you have an instant speed way of dealing damage to your opponent. So you're able to kind of play this, and then every wizard you play turns into a lightning bolt. And then you can, if this thing gets killed, you can obviously put it in the command zone one time and you get like, you can pay 5 for it. But then after that, maybe you put it into the graveyard and then you can bring it back using this ability that still feels very it feels somewhat fair in red, because they do have your opponent does have to lose life. You can only do it during your upkeep, and it is very expensive to do. And then when it enters the battlefield, it's almost like another lightning bolt that you just flash back from your graveyard. So I really like the way this plays. It is a mono red wizard kind of burn deck, which I really don't feel like there's a lot of commander support for, like mono red wizard burn. So I feel like this would create a new type of deck that could be very interesting. Obviously, you may need to up the cost, but I actually think that this is somewhat fair. Next we have, and this will be our final one, Titan's Nest. So this is actually a very, very recent card, and it is a 3-color enchantment, and at the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may put that card into your graveyard. Then you can exile a card from your graveyard and add colorless. Spend this mana only to cast a colored spell without X in its mana cost. So, yeah, I have a very easy way to turn this into a commander. I'm going to show you it. Alright, so here's my basic, turning it into a commander, and this would be a very, very powerful commander. One black, green, blue for legendary creature giant 4/4, and it says at the beginning of your upkeep, surveil, because that's what it says on Titan's Nest, but I just updated it with the mechanic version. Then it says colored cards in your hand without X in their mana cost have delve, and I know this is slightly different than what Titan's Nest does. Titan's Nest lets you just add all the mana up front and then cast things. This means you actually have to have the cards in your graveyard when you cast the spell, so I think it's slightly worse. So it does let you just pay for the colored mana, but I think this is just a much more the colorless mana. It's a much easier way to word it. Now I think this is horribly overpowered, and could probably be up to like that. And now maybe you have something that's a little bit more fair. Now maybe you have something that's a little bit more fair, but I still think this is an insane card. Titan's Nest, I think, is really powerful. So the way it works is so commander-like already that it's hard to take it and take it in a different direction. So I think that would be it. Now, that's going to do it for this video. Obviously, this was just kind of a test run. Let me know what you guys think of it in the comments down below. Should there be more regulation as to what I take about the card? Like, obviously with this one, I just kind of took the basis of, I took almost the exact wording of the card, kind of reworded it, made some slight tweaks up to the mana cost, but some of them, like in the, Disintegrate, I completely changed. So yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. If you enjoyed, hit that like button. Again, if you have any suggestions for how I could have turned these cards into custom cards, let me know. Also, if instead of me using a random one, if you want to leave a suggestion for a card, in the next video, I'll look at those suggestions and add random ones on top of that. So yeah, just a fun little video. See you in the next one. Bye.